The way we look at ourselves on the outside is a direct reflection on how we see ourselves on the inside. The better we look on the outside, the better we feel on the inside. It's amazing how that works, isn't it? When we improve our self-image, we actually improve our performance in the things that we do. When I talk to people, I always make it a habit to look them directly in the eyes. And a lot of people, in response to that, they can't look you back in the eye. They look at the ground. They look around at structures that are surrounding you. They look around at other people. And for me personally, when a person won't look me in the eye, I believe there's some trust issues there. I have a hard time trusting that individual. Smile at people on a daily basis. I smile everywhere I go. I smile at everything. I laugh at everything. I like to laugh. I make it a habit to speak and acknowledge every person I come in contact with, even if I'm just walking by them in a store or something like that. I always make it a habit to speak to them. When you acknowledge others, it tells them that you believe they're an important person. Some won't speak back, but that's okay. It happens all the time. A lot of times the reason people don't speak back, some people are just plain negative, and they don't want anybody to come in and interrupt anything that they have negative with anything positive. Some people, self-image just won't allow them to speak back, but that's okay. I speak to them anyway. I smile anyway. Sometimes if I just want to have a little fun, I'll speak to them. And if they don't speak back, I'll say, that's great. You have a good day. And watch how you feel if you create a habit of speaking to people on a regular basis. Years ago, I read a book by Zig Ziglar titled See You at the Top. And Zig Ziglar says that, those people who are going somewhere in life should always walk 25% faster than everybody else. Because when people see you moving a little bit faster than everybody else, they know there's a person that's going somewhere. We have to associate with people who are going somewhere positive in life. Our associations are very important and vital. I remember as a kid, my parents telling me birds of a feather flock together. And a lot of us who've had kids, we tell our kids birds of a feather flock together. And for some kind of reason, as adults, we forgot that information that we were taught as kids. And we don't even pay attention to the birds we hanging with. So our associations are important. My mentor always makes the statement, if we hang around bank robbers long enough, eventually they're going to let us drive a getaway car. Negativity sells. The weatherman is negative. The weatherman will come on TV on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, he'll give you a 7-day forecast. If he gives you a 7-day forecast, why does he need to work Monday through Saturday? Had you ever thought about that? He'll come on TV tonight and he'll tell us, tomorrow we have a 20% chance of rain. Had you ever thought about why he had never told you there's an 80% chance of sunshine? Just something to think about. I don't watch the news. We don't watch the news here in my house because news is negative. We don't hear about, for the most part, unless it's athletic event. The only time we hear about positive with athletic events is if our local team made it to a championship, and I'm pretty sure wherever you are, it's the same thing, and even more so if they won. But that's about it. You don't hear about too much other positive or great things happening. You have the 5 and 6 o'clock news, depending on where you are in the country, and then you'll have a repeat of the same news at 10 and 11 o'clock in the evening, depending on where you are in the country. And the only difference between the late afternoon news and the evening news is 2 more people got killed in that time frame. And so we have to really pay attention to how much negative we allow into our brains. It takes 16 positives to dilute 1 negative. That just shows you the power of negativity on our brains. We each have about 80,000 thoughts per day. I'm sorry, not 80,000, 50,000 thoughts per day. I got a little ahead of myself, and over 80% of those thoughts are negative. That just shows you how powerful negative is. Our attitudes are the most important thing in our lives, in my opinion. Our attitudes are a reflection of how we think about ourselves. Our attitudes determine our expectations of ourselves. Our attitudes determine who we choose to be our friends. I talked about that earlier with our associations. We have to choose our friends based on our destination and not let our friends choose our destination. Because when your friends or somebody else choose your destination, you might not like where you're going to end up. When our attitudes are not positive, we normally have low expectations. I remember this guy was life hadn't been treating him fairly. And he was getting ready to turn 30 years old. And he went to the carnival. And he saw a sign that said fortunes told $10. So he went inside and paid the lady his $10. And she told him, well, you're going to be broke, disgusted, and despondent until age 45. And he kind of hung his head low. And then a thought triggered in his head. And he got a big smile on his face. He said, well, what's going to happen at age 45? And the fortune teller said, oh, by then you'll be used to it. And I can't speak for anybody else, but when I was in school, my parents decided everything for me. And, it also had something to do with me living in their house. And when I got to college, my advisors, my professors, and my coaches decided everything for me based on where I said I wanted to go from that standpoint when I first walked on the campus. And the information I gave them about where I wanted to go was based on the information my parents and I had discussed before that time. After we get out of college, our boss decide where we're going to go. So we spend all of our lives being controlled by someone else. And so we never learn how to control our own lives. We live in a culture in this country of dependence. We're taught to go to school, make good grades, get a good education so you can get a good job, and get a paycheck for the privilege of building somebody else's dream. I mean, how does that make you feel knowing you're going to work every day building somebody else's dream? When you think about what our jobs look like, and I've had a lot of jobs, so I'm talking about myself too. But look at your job. You being an employee on the job is like having a tire on a bicycle. And you look around all of your co-workers there. Each one of you are just a spoke in the wheel of that bicycle of that boss's dream. What happens, as boys, we always, tinkered around with our bicycles and things like that. And so what would happen, if a spoke got bent or something, we either took it off or we replaced it. So what's different about what our bosses do to us? If we become a bad spoke in the wheel, he normally get rid of us and replace us. So in February of this year, earlier this year, which is 2013, I read that 53% of college graduates aged 25 and under are unemployed. We have all been taught the scenario of go to school, get a good education, and get a good job. Keep your nose clean. Well, when 53% of college graduates are unemployed, that means the system is not working. Don't get me wrong, go to college if your career is going to dictate that. But we need to learn how to take some control and ownership of our lives back from everybody else that's been controlling it. But go to school, get your degree. Go into your field of study if you're fortunate to, because, most people are graduating, and the ones that are working are normally not working in the field that they went to school for. Because at that point, it's not about your degree anymore. It's about putting some food on the table. Think about going into business for yourself. When you're in business for yourself, you actually control things versus being controlled. A recent survey was done on employees. 85% of those surveys said they hated their job, but continued to go there because of the solid paycheck. What kind of life is that to live where you go to a place every day? Like when I worked in retail, It started out, in management, I worked 5 days a week. Then it went to 6 days a week. Then it went to 7 days a week. When I quit one of the retail companies I was working for, I was scheduled for 7 12-hour days. What kind of life is that to live? We're so busy making a living that life passes us by. And I mean, like I said, most of us go to a job we hate every day because we appreciate the consistent paycheck. What kind of life is that to live where you go to a place every day that you hate and then we try to act like we're happy? A lot of people say they love their job, but if the boss stopped paying them, the love affair would be over. It wouldn't be no negotiation. Pay attention to some things. When you're out driving your vehicles or you're riding as a passenger or whatever mode of transportation you use, just pay attention to the people that you see on the corner begging for money. Notice something about that individual. It will always, always, always be someone born here in America that's on the corner begging. Always. You will never see someone from another country on a corner begging because they come to the United States of America for the vast opportunities and ownership that us in America don't appreciate and recognize because we sit right in the middle of it. And I mean, it's almost like, sitting in the middle of the ocean, even though the ocean is a vast source of salt water, it's almost like sitting in the middle of the ocean dying from thirst. I mean, you get my drift. Salt is going to make it thirsty even more, but you get my drift about sitting in the middle of opportunity and not taking advantage of it. Those foreigners come from other countries and they are willing to work low-paying jobs and save what they can so they can start a business. I mean, here in Houston, Texas, if you go around, there are certain cultures, especially on the southwest side, they have so much economic strength over there that they've renamed the streets to a language we can't even understand. You look at other cultures, they've come and they've pooled their resources together for the greater good of their communities. But that's a whole nother area I didn't plan to get into on this. But these people come from other countries willing to work the jobs we say we too good for. And right now, what's going through the media is minimum wage needs to be raised because people can't live on minimum wage. Well, minimum wage was never meant to be a living wage. It was supposed to be a learning wage. When you go into a minimum wage job, that means you have no marketable skills to offer to the workplace. So a minimum wage job gives you and teaches you marketable skills so you can take those skills somewhere else to somebody that's going to pay you more money. And the business owners who are paying minimum wage expect you to quit and go somewhere else so they can hire somebody new who has no marketable skills so they can teach them, and the cycle just continues to repeat itself. You were not meant to be on a minimum wage job 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years talking about you having a problem making it in this society. These foreigners transfer their skills, they learn their skills, and they transfer their skills into business ownership, where us who are born here are consistently and persistently actively looking down on low-paying jobs. My first job, I was working, well, actually I started out, I started cutting yards in the neighborhood. $10 a yard. And, after that, some older boys came through and they could do a better job than me, so they stole all my yards from me. And so a few years later, my dad started a lawn service and I started cutting yards with him. And from that, I went to work for a company and my hourly rate was $3.35 an hour. And I was just as happy as I could be getting my own paycheck. I used to DJ parties. I built furniture. I did a lot of things to make money. I believe in the opportunities that are available to us. So we look down on the low paying jobs. And like I said, 3.35 an hour, that's pretty low. We seek out the higher paying jobs. We get a 1.5 to 2.5% raise, for the most part. Some people are more fortunate. I was talking to a young lady the other day, and she said she got a 6% raise, and I was so excited for her because those type of raises just don't happen anymore. But we seek out the higher paying jobs, and we remain there for the rest of our lives in a level of comfortable misery, if you understand what I'm saying. It kind of reminds me of a group of people who were winning freed from a king. And they got mad at the guy who came and fought the king for their freedom. And they bickered and complained every day for the next 40 years. And they never made it to the other side. And they died. And then you look at, for the most part, the working career, the average working career. A lot of people graduate from college at age 22, some 25. And you look at the retirement age that's been given to you. And retirement has nothing to do with age. It's all about economics. But 22 to 25, and then you get to retire for the most part because the system says you reach that age around 62 to 65. And so most people spend 40 years walking around in a job/desert, bickering and complaining about the situation that they're in. And, unfortunately, there's a stat out there that says a lot of people die 18 to 24 months after they retire. And so you spend 40 years in the wilderness, however you want to look at it. And then once you see the promised land, you die before you can step across onto it. So one of the biggest reasons for stress in people's lives is because they go to a place that is not them on a daily basis. Did you know that most heart attacks occur on Monday morning? That tells me one thing. People would rather die than go to a place they hate. We will always work harder for ourselves than we will for anybody else. I was told earlier this year, I was speaking in a function, and I talked about business ownership. I talked about being an employee, and I was talking about the benefits of both. And one of the people at the end of the session, when I took questions, said, well, I was told the other day that 95% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. I said, well, yeah, that's true. I say, but since you know that beforehand, why don't you work to be the 5%? And I pointed out something to the group that day. And I said, while it's true that 95% of businesses fail within the first 5 years, I say there are a lot of reasons for it. I say, lack of expertise, lack of finances to sustain you while you're trying to, put your name out there and become known in the marketplace. And I say, but there are some other things to go into it as well. Attitudes, poor customer service, and, some of the other things you can attribute to that as well. But I also pointed out to this audience, I say we have 330 million people in the United States of America. And when you think about all of the business owners in America, you have to subtract that number, so that number is even smaller. And so when you take the gross number of 330 million, and then you talk about how many people are unemployed, which is about 100 million, those are the people that are unemployed, not the people that are underemployed. When you factor in the unemployed and the unemployed, almost 4 out of every 5 people in the United States of America falls into that category. So why isn't our system talking about that aspect of being in business, as an employee? Because they've been taught to be negative toward business ownership.